A very warm welcome to all the students. Welcome to this channel. Welcome to my channel. So students, today we're going to talk about when does pregnancy begin. So which is that event that happens inside the female reproductive system that marks the beginning of pregnancy. Now we all know what is required to get pregnant, right? So the very first event which is required to get pregnant is sexual intercourse, right? So that is your vital parameter. Now, it is not always the case that sexual intercourse is necessary to get pregnant. Why is that? Because now with technology, with latest technology, pregnancy can be induced without sexual intercourse, right? So now pregnancy can be induced. We can make a woman pregnant without having any sexual intercourse, without the help of any sexual intercourse. Now how is that possible? You may wonder, which is that modern technology, you might wonder. So those are IVF, right? Which is also referred to as test tube babies. Okay. What is the full form of IVF? In vitro fertilization. Okay. So this is one method. Another method is IUI. What is the full form of IUI? Intrauterine insemination. Okay, so these are the two methods, okay, your latest technological methods through which pregnancy can be induced, okay, in a woman without any sexual intercourse. Okay, so these are modern methods. So these methods are usually implied, or it is usually gone for when there is some sort of problems. Okay, when the natural conception, when naturally if the woman is not able to conceive or get pregnant, it is at that time that the couple, the woman, the mother and the father will approach a doctor, and then they will go for IVF or IUI to get pregnant. Now, so the first parameter is clear, that what is required to get pregnant, and that is sexual intercourse. But then again, without that also a woman can get pregnant. So what are the exact things that we require for pregnancy? We need two very important things. One is the female gamete, egg or ovum, and next is the male gamete, which is the sperm, right? So we need, what are the two things? So the first thing which is required is the female gamete, also known as ovum, also referred to as egg. And the second important thing is your male gamete, right? And male gamete is your sperm. Okay, so how is these two entities meet? How do they meet? Right, so let's understand that. So now what happens post sexual intercourse? The male gamete sperm, right, it enters the female reproductive system via the vagina. Okay, so during the sexual intercourse, what is happening? The male gamete, which is the sperm, will now enter the female reproductive system through the vagina. Okay, so here is your diagram. All right. So the sperms will, so this is the vagina. The lowermost part of the female reproductive system is called as the vagina. It is through the vagina the sperms enter the female reproductive system. So the sperms will enter through the vagina. Okay, and now they will travel up through the cervix. Then they will enter the uterus. So this portion is the cervix. Okay, this portion is the vagina, and this entire portion in the middle is your uterus. So now the sperms will enter the uterus. So basically they have to travel. So once after sexual intercourse, the sperms are deposited inside the vagina, and now they start traveling. So they travel from vagina into the uterus, and the cervix, and then into the uterus. And now what will happen? Now these sperms will split in two directions. So now they will enter the fallopian tube. So now this portion, okay, this tube-like portion on either side, these are called as the fallopian tube. Now the sperms will enter the fallopian tube. Okay? Why do they enter the fallopian tube? What is there inside the fallopian tube? Because inside the fallopian tube they will find the female gamete, which is the egg. Now this over here, right? Now this is your ovary. Now we know the ovary releases the female gamete, that is the egg, and the fimbriae, which is the finger-like projection of the fallopian tube, will pick the egg and they will take the egg inside the fallopian tube. So somewhere over here, your ovum will wait for the sperm to come and fertilize it. So now the sperms will enter the fallopian tube, and now they will come straight towards the egg, that is the ovum. So can you all guess which is the next step? So now comes the next step in the process of pregnancy, and that is fertilization. Okay? For pregnancy, the next step is fertilization, that is after the sperms enter the female reproductive system. For fertilization to occur, sperms will begin their journey from vagina to cervix to uterus and then spread across the two fallopian tubes. Very important point to remember over here, students. The female gamete ovum waits inside the fallopian tube for the sperm. The ovum will not move from its place. Okay, it is always the sperm that will travel towards the egg. Okay, so it is always the sperm which travels towards the egg. Egg or the ovum will not move from its place. It will wait at this very particular spot for the sperms to come and fertilize it. Okay. So what is fertilization? Let's look into the definition of fertilization. Okay. So fertilization, students, it is a fusion of male and female gamete, okay, that leads to the formation of a single fertilized cell called as the zygote. Okay. So once the sperm reaches the egg or the ovum, only one sperm will fuse with the ovum. Now another important point to remember over here, even though millions of sperms are produced and delivered into the female reproductive system, only one sperm will fuse with the egg. Okay, so sperms are produced in millions of numbers, millions, but egg is produced only one. So out of the millions of sperms which are produced, only one sperm will always fertilize the egg, only one. Okay, so that process is called as fertilization, that is fusion of male and female gamete is called fertilization, and that leads to the formation of a single fertilized cell called as the zygote. So now you all tell me, students, now that the fertilization has happened, did the pregnancy begin? Do you think the pregnancy has begun? What is the answer? Yes or no? Did it begin or not? The answer to this is no. Okay, the pregnancy is still not established. The pregnancy has still not started. Okay, so formation of zygote or fertilization does not mean pregnancy. Then when will it begin? Right? When does the pregnancy actually begin? Let's understand that now. So students, where did the zygote form? Zygote formed inside the fallopian tubes. Okay. So let's look into this. So over here the fusion happened between the male and female gamete and the zygote has formed. So zygote formed inside the fallopian tube. Okay. So zygote formation is always inside the fallopian tube. Now, like I said in the beginning, it's a single cell. So zygote is a single cell. So a point to note over here, students, all of us have come out from a single cell. Every human being develops out of a single cell. So the zygote, which is formed inside the fallopian tube, now it will start its journey. What is that journey? From the single cell, it will start dividing, multiplying itself. So now it will become 2 cells. From 2, it will now multiply into 4 cells. And like that, as it is dividing and multiplying itself, okay, it is traveling across the fallopian tube. Alright, it is traveling across the fallopian tube. So when it is multiplying, it is traveling across the fallopian tube, ultimately to reach towards the uterus. Okay, it is traveling in the direction of the uterus. So as it reaches the uterus, it has already converted itself into a ball of cells. Okay, now this ball of cell is termed as blastocyst. Okay, so zygote has given rise to blastocyst by the time it enters the uterus. Now, as soon as this blastocyst enters the uterus, what will it do? It will immediately attach itself to the uterine wall. So it will embed itself inside the uterus wall like this. So the uterus wall will now accommodate it. It will attach itself into the uterus wall. So this process of attachment, okay, of the blastocyst with the uterus, this is termed as implantation. Okay, so what is implantation? Let's look into the definition. Okay, so post formation of the zygote, it will start multiplying and at the same time begins to roll down the fallopian tube towards the uterus. So by the time it reaches the uterus, zygote is now transformed from a single cell to a ball of cells. So this ball of cell is called as blastocyst. This blastocyst is extremely sticky and attaches itself to the wall of uterus. Okay, and the process of attachment of blastocyst with the uterine wall is called as implantation. And only when implantation occurs, pregnancy begins. So students, implantation marks the beginning of pregnancy. So pregnancy begins only after implantation. Okay, fertilization does not mean pregnancy. Fertilization is important for implantation to occur because fertilization will give us zygote. Okay, implantation will lead to pregnancy. So let's take the important points from today's class. Okay, so the first thing, students, is the male gamete and the female gamete. Okay, now the fusion of these two gametes is called as fertilization. Okay, and where does fertilization occur? It occurs in fallopian tube. Okay, what will it lead to? What is formed after fertilization? Zygote. Okay, after fertilization we see implantation. What is implantation? It is the attachment of blastocyst to the uterine wall. Okay, and this marks the beginning of pregnancy. Okay, and where does pregnancy happen? It happens only and only inside the uterus. It should not happen anywhere else. So pregnancy should only happen inside the uterus. So now you wonder, okay, what is happening in IVF and IUI? Right, what is happening in IVF and IUI? So in IVF and IUI, specifically in IVF, what is happening? The fertilization process, that is this step, the fertilization is not happening inside the fallopian tube. The fertilization is happening inside the test tube in a laboratory. Okay, now after the fertilization which happened inside the test tube, this will give us what? Zygote. Okay, the zygote is further developed or further left to multiply to give us embryo. Okay, and now this embryo is transferred into the uterus of the woman. Transferred to uterus of the woman, and this embryo will now attach with the, so now implantation will occur. Implantation, that is attachment of embryo with the uterine wall, and after this implantation the pregnancy will officially begin. Okay, are we clear of how IVF works? So instead of fertilization to happen inside the fallopian tube, here the fertilization is done inside a test tube. So the male and the female gamete, that is sperm and ovum, is taken from the man and woman, and then they are used to fertilize. So the fertilization happens inside the test tube. Post that, the zygote which is formed is left to multiply and give rise to embryo. This embryo is then taken and then transferred into the uterus of the woman, where the embryo will attach itself to the uterine wall, leading to implantation, and then after the implantation happens pregnancy. Okay, whereas in IUI, what is happening? IUI is intrauterine insemination. So over here it is almost like a natural conception, but instead here the semen which contains the sperm, right? Semen is directly delivered into the deep inside the female reproductive system. Okay, so instead of depositing the semen into the vagina, here the semen is directly pushed inside, deep inside the female reproductive system, almost near the entry of the fallopian tubes, so that the sperms can directly enter the fallopian tube and reach the egg. Okay, thereby increasing the chances of fertilization and thereby pregnancy. So that is your IUI. So I hope, student, today's class was helpful for you. So please take this down. So today's class we spoke about when does pregnancy begin. So pregnancy begins after the fusion of male and female gamete, leading up to the fertilization. After fertilization we see implantation. So even though fertilization sometimes happens, if the zygote or the blastocyst fails to attach itself to the uterine wall, pregnancy will not happen. So pregnancy only happens when there is implantation. Okay. So students, that was all for today's class. I hope it was helpful for you and you all understood what the concept is and when pregnancy actually begin. I will be uploading similar videos in my channel regularly. So please subscribe and keep watching and keep learning. Alright. So bye students. Take care. See you next time. Bye everyone.